All right, let's jump right in, folks. Today we're heading into some pretty choppy waters.
Oh, yeah.
The South China Sea, to be exact.
Definitely choppy.
And I know you've all been following along at home,
Keep it up with the news.
so you know just how important these two new laws from the Philippines are.
Big developments for sure.
We're talking about Republic Act Num 12064,
The Philippine Maritime Zones Act.
right, and Republic Act Num 12065.
The Philippine Archipelagic Sea Lanes Act.
And get this, both were just signed by President Marcos Jr. a few days ago.
Really shaking things up.
It's like the Philippines is basically drawing a line in the sand.
More like a line in the water.
Okay, a line in the water.
Exactly. They're laying down the law saying, this is ours.
It's a pretty bold move with some serious global consequences.
Huge geopolitical implications.
So let's break it down. The Maritime Zones Act is kind of like the Philippines pulling out this giant map and pointing.
Like, see this?
This is our exclusive economic zone we're calling dibs.
Exactly. All the fish, oil, natural gas, you name it. It's theirs.
And they're backing it up by aligning their laws with the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea.
Gives them serious clout internationally.
Like, we're not making this up. The UN's got our back.
Exactly. They're playing by the book, so to speak.
And President Marcos Jr. himself has even said this is about the Philippines' commitment to protecting their maritime domain.
You can really feel that commitment.
But, as you might expect, not everyone's thrilled about this.
Definitely ruffled some feathers.
China's reaction, well, it was like someone stepped on their brand new shoes.
Not happy at all. They immediately summoned the Philippine ambassador.
Issued a pretty stern protest.
Accused the Philippines of encroaching on what they see as their territory.
And they specifically pointed to places like Scarborough Shoal.
And the Spratly Islands.
Major flashpoints in this whole dispute for years.
Oh yeah, those areas have been contested for a long time.
And China didn't stop there. They also issued a warning.
Things could escalate.
Like, hey, you're playing with fire here.
Definitely upping the tension.
So yeah, this Maritime Zones Act is definitely a power move by the Philippines.
No question about it.
But how does the other law fit into all of this?
The Archipelagic Sea Lanes Act.
Yeah, that one.
We'll picture the Philippines like a giant house. Lots of doors and hallways, right?
Okay, I'm following.
This law is like the Philippines setting up specific paths through their house.
Designated routes.
Exactly. And saying, guests are welcome, but you have to use these paths. 2 going east-west and 1 north-south.
So they're not totally closing off their waters.
Not at all. International law guarantees innocent passage,
Right, ships can still pass through.
Like this new law adds a layer of control. It's like having a guard at the door, checking IDs, making sure everyone follows the rules.
Makes sense. So they can actually stop ships from passing through?
They can suspend passage if there's a security risk.
Like if they think something shady is going on.
Exactly, like smuggling or something. And it's especially interesting for submarines.
Oh, how so?
They're basically saying, you can't just lurk underwater anymore. If you're using our lanes, you got to surface and show your flag.
Wow, that's pretty bold.
It is. It's all about asserting their sovereignty and having more control.
I can see that. And I read that these lanes have to be approved by the International Maritime Organization.
That's right. Got to get the UN's stamp of approval.
Like getting your house rules approved by the neighborhood association.
Doesn't like that.
Now, one thing that really struck me was this quote from Senator Tolentino, who was really pushing for these laws.
Oh, yeah. What do you say?
He called the Maritime Zones Act the birth certificate of the West Philippine Sea.
That's a powerful image.
It really is. It's like the Philippines formally claiming this area, even if China doesn't want to sign the paperwork.
And to reinforce that, they're even releasing a brand new map that clearly outlines their territory.
Making it official.
Exactly. This is ours. End of story.
Wow. It feels like the Philippines is taking a very different approach from the previous administration.
Definitely a shift in strategy.
The previous administration seemed more willing to try and get along with China.
A more conciliatory approach.
But President Marcos Jr. even said these laws reflect the Filipino character.
What do you think you meant by that?
I think it shows a real sense of pride and a willingness to stand up for what they believe in.
Like, we're not going to be pushed around anymore.
We know our rights and we'll defend them.
Exactly. So these laws are more than just legal documents.
They're a declaration of independence, a way for the Philippines to take control of their own destiny.
And it's going to be really interesting to see how China and the rest of the world respond to this new assertiveness.
Definitely a lot to unpack here. Make sure to join us for part 2, where we'll dive even deeper into the potential consequences of these laws. We'll look at the impact on regional relationships, the economic implications, and the role of international organizations.
And we'll also explore the potential for conflict, the possibility of cooperation, and what all this means for the future of the Philippines. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. It's like watching a chain reaction, you know?
How so?
Well, the Philippines makes this big move.
Draws that line in the water.
Exactly. And now everybody's watching.
Wondering what happens next.
Yeah, will other countries follow suit?
That's a great point. What about places like Vietnam?
Malaysia, Indonesia?
Yeah, they all have issues with China in the South China Sea, too.
Oh, absolutely. They've got their own territorial disputes.
So could these new Philippine laws embolden them?
Give them the courage to stand up to China.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
It's definitely possible. Think of it like this.
Okay.
You've got a group of friends,
Mm-hmm.
and there's this bully picking on them.
Right.
For a long time, nobody wants to fight back.
Too scared.
Exactly. But then, one of them finally stands up to the bully.
What happens then?
Well, that can give the others courage.
You realize they can stand up too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we might see a united front forming,
More Southeast Asian nations pushing back against China,
saying enough is enough.
drawing their own lines in the sand.
Exactly. It's a real possibility.
And what about the U.S.?
Ah, yes, the big player.
They've been pretty vocal about freedom of navigation in the South China Sea.
Oh, yeah, they've been sending warships through those waters,
Flexing their muscles a bit.
trying to show China they're watching.
So how do you think these new laws affect their involvement?
Yeah, it's tricky for the U.S.
How so?
They've got this security alliance with the Philippines.
Right, a long-standing one.
So they want to support their ally,
But
they also don't want to provoke China too
to
much.
start a war.
Exactly.
Mm.
It's a delicate balancing act for them,
So they're walking a tightrope.
trying to find that sweet spot.
Support the Philippines without triggering a major international incident.
It's a tough position to be in.
Do you think these new laws actually increase the chances of a military conflict in the South China Sea?
It's hard to say for sure.
It's a complicated situation.
Very complex. Anytime you've got these overlapping claims and rising tensions,
It's a recipe for disaster.
there's always a risk things could spiral out of control.
So these laws could actually make things worse.
It could. But they could also be a way for the Philippines to strengthen their position without resorting to force.
So a show of strength.
Exactly. It's like they're saying, we're not looking for a fight, but we're ready to defend ourselves.
Okay, so it's a high-stakes game of strategy.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears for a minute.
Okay.
Let's talk about the economic side of things.
I'm all ears.
We've talked about fishermen and resources,
Right.
but what about other economic activities in the Philippines' EZ?
Their exclusive economic zone.
Right. Could this open up new opportunities for them?
Potentially.
We're talking about a potential gold mine here.
Really?
The EEZ is full of natural resources.
Like what?
Oil, natural gas, fisheries.
Wow. A real treasure chest.
Exactly. By clarifying their rights.
And these new laws
Right, the Philippines could attract foreign investment.
and kickstart development.
Exactly. Think of all the possibilities.
But wouldn't that just make China even angrier?
Possibly, yeah.
I mean, they claim rights to those resources, too.
That's true. But it also creates an interesting opportunity.
What's that?
Joint development agreements.
Joint development agreements.
Yeah, have you heard of those?
Not really. Explain it to me.
Okay, so imagine this.
Okay.
You and your neighbor both claim ownership of a lemon tree.
A lemon tree.
Yeah, it's right on the property line.
Half on your side, half on theirs.
Exactly. Now, you could constantly fight over who gets the lemons.
Sounds messy.
It would be. Or you could work together.
You share the lemons.
More than that, you share the costs of caring for the tree, you split the harvest.
Everybody wins.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the idea behind joint development agreements.
So instead of fighting over resources in the South China Sea,
The Philippines and China could cooperate and share the benefits.
that's a really interesting idea,
It is. Of course, it would require a lot of trust.
which is in short supply these days.
Yeah, and diplomacy.
Lots of talking.
Exactly. But if they could pull it off,
It could be a win-win.
absolutely. Everyone benefits.
So these laws have the potential to trigger conflict,
Definitely a possibility.
but they could also open doors for cooperation.
That's the thing about this situation.
What is it?
It's so unpredictable.
Like a choose-your-own-adventure story.
Exactly. Multiple possible endings.
So many moving pieces.
And the actions of each player can have huge ripple effects.
Affecting the whole region.
The whole world, even
We've talked about regional relations.
the economic side of things.
The risk of conflict, even the possibility of cooperation.
It's a lot to consider.
But what about international organizations?
Ah, yes. The UN, ASEAN.
Do they have a role to play in all of this?
Absolutely. They could be crucial as mediators,
Helping to facilitate dialogue?
encouraging a peaceful resolution.
But isn't China against that kind of involvement?
You're right. They prefer to handle things bilaterally.
Directly with other countries.
No outside interference.
So it'd be like trying to herd cats.
You could say that.
Trying to get everyone to agree.
It's tough. But as the situation gets more tense,
More pressure.
exactly, there might be more pressure from the international community.
To find a peaceful solution.
One that doesn't involve warships.
So even if China refuses to officially negotiate with a mediator?
These organizations can still play a role behind the scenes.
Back-channel diplomacy.
Exactly. They can help build bridges, promote communication, and encourage everyone to play by the rules,
Like a referee standing by.
just in case things get out of hand.
Makes sense. So where does this leave the Philippines?
They're in a tough spot.
Between a rock and a hard place.
They want to stand up for their rights,
Protects their interests.
but they also don't want to provoke China.
A real balancing act.
So what's their best move? That's the million-dollar question.
What do you think?
Well, there are no easy answers.
It's complicated.
They need to keep strengthening relationships with other countries.
Build alliances.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And build up their defenses.
Make it clear they're not an easy target.
Deter any aggression. And they need to use international law and organizations to their advantage.
Smart strategy.
It's a combination of diplomacy, deterrence, and legal savvy.
So a multi-pronged approach.
Exactly. It's a tough road ahead for the Philippines.
Navigating these choppy waters.
But amidst all this talk about international relations and legal maneuvering,
There's something we haven't really talked about.
what's that?
The human element.
The Filipino people themselves.
How are they feeling about all of this?
That's a great question. Public opinion is mixed.
Makes sense. It's a complex situation.
There's a lot of national pride,
Wanting to protect their territory.
of course. But there's also realism.
They know they're up against a powerful adversary.
China's not easy to mess with.
So some people support these new laws,
See them as a necessary step,
while others are worried.
concerned about the consequences.
It's understandable.
It's a high-stakes situation with no guarantees.
But let's go back to those joint development agreements.
Ah, yes, a potential solution.
Could that really work?
It's a long shot, but not impossible.
Tell me more.
Both China and the Philippines have a lot to gain from a stable South China Sea.
Peace and prosperity.
Exactly. Imagine them collaborating instead of fighting.
Working together on fishing, tourism, energy.
It sounds utopian, but it could happen.
It'd be a huge win for everyone.
Absolutely. The whole region would benefit.
So there's a glimmer of hope.
There is, but it would require a huge shift in thinking.
From both sides.
They'd need to build trust, compromise, and be patient.
That's a tall order.
It is. But if they can pull it off,
Joint development could be a game changer.
a real turning point.
So, big picture, what's the takeaway for our listeners?
The South China Sea situation is complex and always changing,
There's no easy answers.
and the stakes are high.
Every decision matters.
The choices made by the Philippines, China, and others in the coming years will have a huge impact.
On the region, and maybe even the world.
It's a reminder that we need international law, diplomacy, and peaceful solutions.
Because these disputes can have global consequences.
Exactly. But even with all the challenges,
There's still hope for a better future.
always, it's up to us to stay informed and engaged.
And hopeful.
Exactly. The story's still being written,
It's like we're watching a ship, you know?
sailing into uncharted waters.
Exactly. No one knows where it'll end up, but
Lots of uncertainty.
yeah, with all this talk about diplomacy and geopolitics and legal stuff,
High-level stuff.
it's easy to forget about the people at the heart of it all.
The everyday Filipinos.
Right. What does this all mean for them?
It's a crucial question. Imagine you're
Yeah.
a fisherman in the Philippines going out every day.
Trying to make a living.
Exactly. To put food on the table for their families,
And suddenly these new laws come into play.
adding another layer of complexity.
It's like they're stuck in the middle.
Caught in this international tug of war,
On one side, their own government,
asserting its rights.
and on the other, you've got Chinese vessels patrolling.
sometimes even using force.
to keep Filipino fishermen away from their traditional fishing grounds.
It's a tough situation.
Absolutely. And it's not just about fishing either.
Right.
These new laws could impact tourism,
Offshore energy exploration.
even the prices of things people buy every day.
The ripple effects could be huge.
It's like these laws could reshape the whole Filipino economy.
Potentially, yes.
But let's be honest, there's a big elephant in the room here.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
China. And they're not known for backing down.
That's an understatement.
They've made it very clear they're not happy
They see these laws as a direct challenge,
to their claims in the South China Sea,
and they're not afraid to use pressure
economic or military.
to get what they want.
Okay, so things could get messy. Is there any chance,
Any hope?
yeah, that this could lead to something good?
It's a long shot,
But
but it's not impossible. Think about it. Both China and the Philippines benefit from stability in the South China Sea.
peace and prosperity.
Exactly. Imagine a future where they're not fighting,
But working together.
collaborating on fishing, tourism, energy exploration.
It sounds too good to be true.
It does, I know. But stranger things have happened.
It'd be a win for everyone.
Absolutely. Not just China and the Philippines.
The whole region would benefit.
A more peaceful and prosperous future for everyone.
It's a beautiful thought. But realistically,
It'd require a huge shift in thinking on both sides.
building trust,
Finding common ground.
being willing to compromise.
All essential ingredients.
A tall order for sure.
It is. But if they can manage it, well,
Joint development could really change the game.
potentially a major turning point
So much at stake.
for everyone involved.
So for our listeners today,
What should they take away from all this?
yeah, what's the key takeaway?
The situation in the South China Sea is complex and constantly evolving.
It's a moving target.
There are no easy answers, and the stakes are incredibly high.
Every decision has consequences.
The choices made by the Philippines, China, and other key players in the coming months and years will shape the future of the region.
And maybe even the world.
It really highlights the importance of international law
Diplomacy.
and finding peaceful solutions to complex disputes.
Because these issues can have global repercussions.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even in the face of these huge challenges,
There's always a chance for things to get better.
always, a possibility for cooperation and a brighter future.
It's important to stay hopeful.
Absolutely. We need to stay informed, engaged, and work towards a positive outcome.
Well, this has been a fascinating discussion.
A real deep dive.
We've learned a lot about the South China Sea,
The legal
their
complexities
potential for conflict.
and the possibility of cooperation.
The stakes are high.
The next chapter is still being written,
We'll have to wait and see how it all unfolds.
but one thing's for sure.
What's that?
The choices made in the coming months and years will have a lasting impact on the region and the world.
Thanks for joining us today on this deep dive into the South China Sea.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deeper.